So without further ado, let me please introduce the panel that will discuss the current state of global green digital infrastructure investment and key challenges and opportunities related to such investments. On stage, we'll have Charles Hurpy, the Senior Digital Specialist, World Bank, Jonas Corné, the Operating Partner, Ardian, founder and former CEO of GreenByte, Stefan Wunderer, Government Funding Manager of Nokia Mobile Networks, Daniel Paska, Director Sustainability Policy at Ericsson, and the panel will be moderated by Mathilde McBride, who's a Data Protection Lead at Accenture. Thank you.
Fantastic, thank you. So, thank you for the introduction. So, I have been here this morning and there's a lot of discussions around AI and a lot of sustainability. And so it makes sense to look about financing this. What can we do from an investment perspective? What support do we as a community need from public and private partnerships? And this is why we have this panel today to sort of discuss about these policies, regulations, but also looking at financing this type of infrastructure. So, which naturally brings me onto you, Charles. So, from a World Bank perspective, what is the World Bank currently doing to embed these policies internationally, and perhaps you might have a few comments from a funding perspective as well.
Right. Thank you very much for your question.
Yeah.
So it's a very interesting question, very important, and we at the World Bank, we really committed to make sure that the digital transformation is made in a sustainable way, right? I think last year we financed something like 700 million worth of digital infrastructure worldwide. And so for us, the public sector is in the driving seat when it comes to making sure that sustainability is embedded. It goes from policy making, strategy, making sure the awareness is there in the policymakers, but also the population, and the incentive and the innovation. So when we work with government, we typically work on two fronts. On the policy side, making sure that things related to standards, certification, best practices are embedded. And then also in the design of the project, having the proper activities, but also the right procurement, because actually it starts from that. So we help the government on all of this. Now the specific situation in which we are is that most of our countries, they don't belong to the categories of the high emitters. And at the same time, they're typically the most vulnerable, right? So the focus that we have is definitely on the adaptation and the mitigation. And in that context, the difficulties that we have is to make sure that the infrastructure that they invest in is green and resilient, right? Why would they go the extra mile and invest more money when the resources are scarce and there's so many things to finance in parallel, right? So there was a study that was done quite a few years ago, but still very interesting. I will not go into the detail, but what it showed is that when you invest in resilient infrastructure, the marginal cost is relatively moderate, but more importantly, when you run the hundreds of scenarios of everything that could go wrong, what you see is that in 96% of the cases, the benefit to cost ratio is higher than 1. And actually, in 3/4 of the case, is higher than 2, and 1/4 of the case is higher than 6. So it really makes sense for even developing countries that have limitation in the financial resources to go into this resilient infrastructure. And the last thing I wanted to mention is the importance of data collection to set up the right policy, to monitor the impact. One example I could bring is the case of Maldives. So Maldives is an interesting case. The dire projection is that by 2050, actually 80% of the country will be uninhabitable. So green is central to what they have to do. And we have a nice project going on over there. One part is to help the country to transition to this digital economy. And the second part is to help them to have the proper data for their climate action. One that is interesting is the coral reef. They're subject to the bleach, warm temperature, etc. And so the government of Maldives are using all this technology that are available now to get this data collection. I'm thinking about drone survey, this thing called fluid lensing to look at the waterbed. There's also this thing called acoustic monitoring, because healthy coral reef are actually very noisy, but you can monitor the health of this over time. And so you can bring all this technology that already exists to have the proper policy in place and to make sure you can have on-time policy actions.
Yeah, so evidence-based policies.
Thank you.
Makes sense. Thank you. Actually, that brings me on quite naturally to you, Stefan. So I understood based on our conversation this morning that you're working, of course, from a government funding perspective from Nokia, but I understand you work with about 60 countries for this project, and perhaps you have a few comments about the specific project that you're working on.
Can you hear me, Belle? Yeah,
Yes.
good. So thanks for having me. I'm working in two areas. I'm on the one side heading this project. It's not, did you say 60 countries?
Yeah, I think
No,
it's
it's
60
60 companies,
Some
Europe in
countries,
15,
yes.
so not 60 countries, fortunately. And the target of this 𝐵𝐲 project, as one of the 𝐵𝐲's projects, is microelectronics and communication technologies, and really to bring the infrastructure in several areas, not only digital infrastructure, with a better microelectronics and funding microelectronics to also make it more energy efficient. And the other job I have within Nokia, I'm also heading this energy efficiency part and a task force. And for example, in my company, and I think in other companies as well, are more than 500 really R&D experts working just on energy efficiency features, which means a supplier like Nokia is really investing a lot into energy efficiency. And the main target is that with this exponentially raising traffic, what we are seeing everywhere, we try to keep the energy consumption flat. And that is also principally working as long as the operators are using these energy efficiency features, which is not always the case, because an operator is having the problem to also guarantee the performance of the network to the end users. And I understand also that they can be shy regarding using these energy efficiency features. So it is a combined action on the one side with funded projects to bring forward topics like energy efficiency, but for sure also it's a business, and we have to look into this business.
Yeah, okay. Perhaps, Daniel, could you comment about, so I read the white paper report from Ericsson, and in this report it suggested that only 10% growth, I think, of electricity consumption is forecasted. So I was wondering, could you comment on that? Because it's a little bit different to what Stefan is suggesting.
Thank you. Yes, there is a lot of discussion and debate on the energy consumption of the ICT sector, especially now when AI is in its verge and also data centers are booming out. We have been, from Ericsson's side, we've been researching on the use phase, how much is the sector actually using in energy since 18 years back. So we started in 2007, so we have a pretty good data set. And what we see is that history has proven to be wrong before, and it might also be wrong now in the future when it comes to data centers and AI. But when it comes to traditional services like telecom, and also traditional data center services.
Sorry to cut you, Daniel. Could you just bring your mic up a little bit? Yes.
Closer?
A little bit closer.
Great. Then we believe that there will not be such a big impact. We estimate like in the next 5 years it will be a 10% increase only in energy consumption. And that's because of basically of increased digitalization, increased build-out of networks, of data centers, but not the services in itself. They won't, the surge of data will not impact the energy consumption, precisely as Stefan, our colleague from Nokia, is saying. So data is not equal to energy growth. It's other things that matter when it comes to energy growth.
Thank you. And so, Jonas, could you tell us a little bit more about what Ardian does to actually help fund or invest in these sustainable projects with the various assets that you're working on from an Ardian perspective, please?
Sure. So first of all, just a note on who Ardian is. So Ardian is a French investment house, one of the largest investment houses in Europe, with $180 billion under management. 40 of those are in infrastructure. And within infrastructure, we invest in transportation. Among other investments, we are the largest shareholder in Heathrow within the transportation bucket. We invest in digital communication, meaning towers and fiber and data centers. And we also invest in energy, primarily renewable energy, wind, solar, batteries. So we're really all across the infrastructure, all across infrastructure. And we think deeply about sustainability. Even though sustainability, in my mind, has become a word which has gotten a bit out of fashion, I like to think of sustainability as things that are relevant and useful for a very long period of time. And we believe that our investments in infrastructure will be so. But yes, we consider not just the return on investment, but also in order to get the return on investment, the assets we invest in have to be there for a long time, and society has to really accept and embrace what we invest in. And that is a way for us to protect the money of our limited partners and to guarantee or to provide a good return for them. But we have to think about the investments in a more holistic sense.
Could you give us a bit more of a... What size of investment are we really speaking about here in terms of numbers, just to give a little bit more grounded context to this?
Sure. So if we talk about... so overall, like in infrastructure, we manage roughly 40 billion euros. And the investments we make, we don't want to be over-invested in one sector or in one specific company. So overall, I would say that the investments we make are on the order of 500 million to 2 billion euros. And that could be in a company that is a platform company for deploying data centers or building data centers. It could be in a renewable energy IPP that owns and develops wind farms. So it's a quite big investments all over the world, in Europe, in US, South America.
And so perhaps Daniel, Stefan, I'm just wondering how, from your industry perspective, when you're speaking to your stakeholders or other companies that are working with you, how is the topic of investment actually introduced into these sustainability topics? Are they discussed readily, or is this something that you would like to have a bit more of an axe on in the near future, given the changes in industry?
Me?
Any of you?
Okay. From investment point of view, for sure, a company like Nokia is very dependent on the customers, on our customers, which are the operators. So the investment decisions are done mainly by the operators, and for sure there are other companies who are also fighting for the customers, and from the operator point of view, the sustainability is getting more and more important. So, for example, energy efficiency or energy consumption is nowadays a real selection topic regarding if we are chosen or other companies are chosen for the investment in the infrastructure. So this is definitely there. What we are seeing is that in the next 1, 2, 3 years, I think the attention will go away from the only energy, because more and more operators are going into renewable energy, which means that the carbon footprint and the carbon targets they have to keep will go away from energy away into embodied emissions. And in the embodied emissions, the microelectronics is the major factor. 70 to 80% of the embodied emissions in telco products are coming from chips, simply. So the attention will go away, and then again it will be a decision from the operators which supplier will be taken, also which is more sustainable. Is this answering your question, or did I answer something different?
No, you answered perfectly. Top marks as usual. Yeah, I do have a question for Daniel. So we spoke about mission-critical networks earlier, and I was wondering what Ericsson does from a 5G perspective there, given that standalone infrastructure is sort of something that we see as old-fashioned, because today, nothing happens exactly in a vacuum. So perhaps you have a few comments there regarding that.
I can. If we look at Europe today and many other regions, but especially Europe, there is a strong need to decarbonize. Not only in Europe, it's globally, basically. But if we want to decarbonize, we need to also electrify. And when we electrify, we need more power. And more power on a short term we can get from renewables. That's the cheapest way we can actually produce power. So if we go full renewable, we also need to mitigate the effects of renewables, so we don't end up in situations like in Spain a couple of weeks ago. And that's where digital comes into the picture. Through digital technologies, we can not only build the smart